So the discourse around Disclosure Day is going to be toxic, it's going to be weird, it's going to give me moments where I slap my forehead. You want to know how I know that? Because on my out of theater reaction, I looked in the comments and I woke up to a lot of interesting ones. One in particular that says this, and I quote, "It's absolute hell, made up rubbish, and so unrealistic." It's a fictional movie about aliens. Oh my gosh. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today I'm so excited to give you my spoiler-free thoughts on Disclosure Day. Thank you so much, Universal Pictures, for giving me the chance to watch this early in review. I saw it in a digital IMAX setting, and that format was pretty good. I actually kind of wanted to see it in Dolby Cinema, I won't lie to you, but it was so fun in IMAX. However, it's not the format that makes the movie. It's the movie that really does all the heavy lifting, because if you don't know by now, you guys... I loved Disclosure Day. It hits theaters this weekend, June 12th, and it's directed by Steven Spielberg, one of the GOATs, of course. If I listed his movies to you, I could probably take up another 10 minutes in this video, but I won't do that. It's written by David Koepp, who actually is the screenwriter behind Jurassic Park, one of many films he's done, Spider-Man as well. And then you have composer John Williams on the music for this movie. This is the 30th collaboration between Spielberg and Williams, and I'm so glad John Williams came out of retirement briefly at 94 years of age to actually score this film. And let me tell you, it's special. The film stars a pretty good cast. Emily Blunt leads here with Josh O'Connor. Then you have Colin Firth, Eve Hewson, and Colman Domingo. Now I'm going to dive into a little bit of what this movie's about and give you all of my positives, negatives, and my overall thoughts. But before we get there, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, and you don't want to miss out on my thoughts with Toy Story 5 coming up this weekend, Supergirl next week, if I'm not mistaken, and I even have, or it might be 2 weeks after that, but honestly, I've got Toy Story 5 coming up, Supergirl coming up, and Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live-action series on Netflix. I'll be reacting to every episode. That's the plan. So stick with me, you guys. Be a part of the journey. Subscribe down below. Tap on that bell so you stay notified. And drop a comment and let me know when you see Disclosure Day, what did you think of it? And please, yes, I know it's aliens. I know it's fictional, okay? You don't got to tell me that this is made-up stuff. Anyway. Let's get into the film. The movie centers around this question. If you found out we weren't alone, and if someone showed you the evidence, proved it to you, would that frighten you? Now, this story really follows two groups of people. One who's interested in what's beyond our Earth, and the other who wants to keep those facts from getting to anyone here on Earth. I seriously did my best to not even give anything away. If you've only seen one trailer, that's enough. If you've seen some posters, that's enough. Please don't continue to watch all the trailers and the TV spots they've been showing during the NBA Finals, because it gives way too much away, in my opinion. So I went in cold for the most part, and it actually aided my experience quite a bit. You know, on the channel though, we always start with the positives. But today, I want to start with the negatives, because there's more good than bad in this movie. So let's get started with my negatives. And the first one that jumped off the page once the credits ran was the fact that Noah Scanlan, that character, right? He's supposed to be centered as the central antagonist to the story, but depending on what side of the aisle you fall on, he might be the protagonist for you. He's played by Colin Firth, a very capable actor, an incredible actor, honestly. You know him if you see him. I know him because his name and his face, but the dude has an incredibly recognizable face. And when I saw him in the movie, I thought, oh, he might just be a scientist dude. Ends up being an antagonist for the most part. So I actually thought it was an intriguing look into that character, because they do dive a little bit deeper than big bad guy. You know what I mean? I can't say too much about that, but I do like that the script tends to give us a lot more of his character in the first half. I wanted a little bit more in the second half though, and that's what didn't work for me in this film too much, which was the antagonist, for all intents and purposes, is a little undercooked. His motivations are understandable by the end of the film, but they tend to be less impactful as the movie goes on. Now, that might be by design, because the screenplay sort of tends to give us more Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor than Colin Firth in the second half. However, there were stretches where I thought, Are we gonna address that? Or are we gonna get into that? But the movie's already 2 hours and about 20 minutes long, so I mean, you can't give us too much, because then it gets into the 2 hour 45-minute mark, and that can be a little rough for some audiences. But no, I do think that his acting is good. The character's a little undercooked. And I had a couple questions as the film was going on, which was, how are they going to wrap this up? And for me, that wasn't the biggest issue because I felt the payoff was worth the buildup and my patience. But for some audiences, I can see this being a negative, which would sort of lean into that territory of, well, you need to explain everything to me. And sometimes you do, and in other instances you don't. And I kind of like that in this movie. They don't really force feed you a lot of things. They kind of leave things up to the audience. What are we going to do with the information that's presented? It is that question that we talked about earlier in this review. But my concern about if they're going to wrap this up nicely went away pretty quickly. And that's because, well, it's time for the positives. It's because, guys, Disclosure Day is a film that when you just think you might know what's going on, you really don't. Steven Spielberg directs a thrilling, mysterious, and yes, an original sci-fi adventure that had me hooked from the very first frame. In the opening scene alone, they waste zero time getting into the action. Josh O'Connor is the scientist. His name is Dr. Daniel Kellner, and he's got a secret that he's trying to keep away from the bad guys to try and give it to the world. Now, what that secret is, we learn as the film goes on, but it, to me, started off incredibly strong. And it sort of rode that momentum, even in the slow moments, because it was in those moments where we needed to learn more about our central characters. And like I mentioned just a little while ago, there's a level of patience that's required sometimes. So if you find yourself looking and being like, what the heck is up with that bird and the deer? It's okay. That will be explained. Just wait. And it's always a plus when you have Steven Spielberg in the director's chair. He hardly misses, right? So this is a movie where he hits the mark. He's not afraid also to inject a little bit of his view on humanity at times, which is very interesting for him at this stage of his career. But he adds a tinge of social commentary about how people perceive religion. Now, as y'all know, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. I have a relationship with Jesus. He is my Lord. He's my Savior. In this movie, there are people who, you can tell, like, okay, this is a nun, this is a Catholic, this is a Christian. And then there are the fanatics who are looking for an idol. And that's not actually outside the realm of reality of what we go through today and what we see today. And there are others on Earth that I know don't share my convictions. But in Disclosure Day, there's a study on people who don't have that relationship with Jesus, and they try to make other humans or other beings their idols. And if aliens did exist, would that be crazy? No. I mean, there's a very particular scene here that's it's short, but it's very poignant, where it sort of hammers home the point where people are willing to make something their religion. It's what happens on Earth, right? So even though, yes, the movie isn't always talking about that, it is an interesting bit of social commentary, and this is what Steven Spielberg's doing at his career now. It's pretty impressive, honestly. None of the motivations by our characters left me in disbelief, because Spielberg does craft a story that, for as much as it is fiction, could still be a reality. If not with aliens, then with something or someone else. And staying on a technical note in the crew involved here, the cinematography by Janusz Kaminski was really, really darn good in this movie. I mean, it's not the first time he's worked with Steven Spielberg. Most recently, he did The Fabelmans with Spielberg. But I was a little underwhelmed in the first half. But in the second half, man, he was cooking. There are some frames that made me say to myself, oh my gosh, this shot is gorgeous. I like the lighting he plays with. There are light leaks. I mean, it all sort of gives this extraterrestrial feeling. And at times, I was just thinking to myself, man, I don't know how Janusz Kaminski can be so, I guess, flexible with his cinematography. He does a good job at getting intimate in these certain scenes, and then he does a good job at getting broad and it being like an action sequence. He can shoot anything at this point. He's just so darn good, and his career speaks for itself. In Disclosure Day, he does another great job at making the film look beautiful. So we go from the alien-infused cinematography to our composer, John Williams. If I say that name to you, of course you think Star Wars, Jurassic Park. He's a legend, right? I mean, he's the greatest composer of all time, at least in my opinion. But his score in Disclosure Day tends to be a little bit more subtle than a lot of his bigger marquee films. At least in the first half of the movie, that's the case. And in the second half, it begins to intensify as we get a lot of reveals. And once a certain curtain is peeled back, his score becomes both tense and playful. It reminds you that this is an alien movie, right? No, I'm not talking about aliens that like burst out of your stomach alien, but aliens in the sense that we are living in this mysterious fictional world right now. What is happening? And that question of what is happening tends to be asked within the score, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of wonder, there's hope even, but I really love how each instrument almost plays a main character role in certain scenes. Is this an S-tier score from John Williams? No, I don't think so, but it will be one of the best pieces of music composed this year. I'm just happy to see that he stepped out of retirement for this film, y'all. I mean, he's into his 90s now. Of course, he's getting older, but God bless him. He's just an awesome composer. So now let's get into the last note I have on the crew, right? So the screenwriter in particular here is David Koepp, and he's not unfamiliar with Steven Spielberg. They've worked together on things like Jurassic Park, right? Now, this is, in my opinion, his best screenplay in probably a decade or more. His script and Steven Spielberg's story presents both a good case for either side of this movie, whether you believe in the aliens or you want to keep that a secret, right? So neither side's denying they exist. One side just doesn't want them to come out with the news, and the other side wants that to be disclosed. Now, while I was able to predict a couple of story beats, it wasn't anything that was like, it took me away from the experience. I've just gotten better lately at predicting certain things. I'm not the best yet. But in this instance, I still couldn't predict the ending. So I'm glad that caught me off guard in a good way. Now, I understand that the ending in this movie in particular might not be for everyone because there are some questions that moviegoers are going to have while leaving the theater, but I do love endings that don't answer every question, that allow the audience to have multiple perspectives. I mean, listen, Christopher Nolan, dude, like one of the greatest directors and writers ever, and sometimes his movies don't necessarily have a definitive ending, and that's okay, right? In this instance, it worked. Sometimes it doesn't, but in this movie, it did well not to over-explain things. Now, I do want to get into the acting because at the core of this movie, it doesn't work without Emily Blunt. She's clearly the lead in this movie. Now, of course, we open the movie with Josh O'Connor and Colin Firth, but when Emily Blunt comes along, her character, Margaret Fairchild, it's just so well written, but even better acted. There are some scenes that literally made me basically on the verge of crying. I was so emotional. There's a scene in particular where she's on the train. There are actually two scenes in particular here. One, she's on the train with Dr. Daniel, right? You know, I said call him Dr. Daniel, but Josh O'Connor's character. And it is such a soul-crushing scene because you see what the character is going through. It's the culmination of all of her anxiety and worry. And gosh, it is just such a beautifully acted and written scene. I mean, I forgot to blink, and you could hear a pin drop in our theater because everyone's locked in. But that's not the only scene that took my breath away. The other one of note is this oneer towards the end of the first act, where Emily Blunt's character, she's a respected meteorologist, but she's got dreams of being on the anchor desk, so she's sort of battling with that on the way to work to do another weather hit. Well, what happens is that, she gets pulled over by the cop, and then you start to see her character experience a very unknown phenomenon. She's, doing things I can't talk about. But something's happening to her in real time, and I'm glad the camera stays with her, and that oneer was so beautiful because, the tension was just kept the whole way. So she's both unraveling and thriving, funnily enough, in this unknown situation. But there are also some fun moments with her boyfriend Jackson, played by Wyatt Russell. He tends to be the comedic relief at times, but he's only in the film a very brief time. He's not here all the time. He's in the first act and then kind of just disappears. But in a way, he was a tinge of realism because there's always going to be someone who's going to doubt, and he's the doubter. But with Emily Blunt's range, I'm glad the screenplay allowed her to breathe in scenes and act her tail off. I just know that scene on the train is going to rip your heart out. That's all I'm going to say. Now, the second actor of note here is Josh O'Connor. So he's been Mr. Consistent lately. I really liked what he did in Rian Johnson's latest Knives Out mystery, but Josh O'Connor is an actor, in my opinion, is pretty versatile, but he knows when to ramp up the intensity and to be very subtle. He's nuanced in a lot of his moments here in this movie, but it works, whether he's acting with his eyes or his body language. And it is so good to witness because in the context of the movie, he's a character who's also dealing with something he's unfamiliar with. And holding on to the facts that might change the world. So he's struggling, right? He wants to better the world, essentially, and give them the information they deserve, but he's also worried about himself, and he's trying to figure out also his relationship with Jane. Jane is a character played by Hewson, I believe is her name, and while she's good in the film, she's probably one of the weaker actresses in the film. I like the scenes of them together, but when she's on her own outside of Josh O'Connor, you start to see maybe, you know, that things aren't working as well, but it doesn't linger for long. I love Josh O'Connor's performance in this movie solo, but together with Emily Blunt, they're a really good duo. Now, when it comes to Colman Domingo, you guys already know how I feel about him. He is one of my favorite living actors, and in my opinion, one of the greatest of all time. Largely in a supporting role here in this movie as Hugo, but I like his charisma on screen. His screen presence really is captivating. So when he's on screen, especially his scene with Colin Firth, it's actually really darn good, and I really love how they play off of one another. But Hugo as a character ends up becoming very important, but Colman Domingo adds gravitas to the role and a cool sense of calm, collected mindset to the character that only really he can deliver. So you're probably wondering, how in the heck do the aliens look? Well, listen, I think the CGI and VFX work for the aliens pretty well. There's some like found footage stuff, so like you got things that I think will actually aid the film. You don't notice too much green screen. You notice it the most, honestly, in the car chase sequences and some of the action moments, but it's nothing that killed the entire mood and vibe of my viewing experience. Now, I will say there's not as much, I want to say, if you're looking for like invasion stuff, like you don't really get much of that. But when they hit, they really deliver. And then, of course, when it comes to an alien film, you want to know about the sound design. Well, the sound design, you know, is pretty darn good in this movie. I kind of wanted, like I mentioned, to see this in Dolby Cinema so I could understand a little bit more of what we're hearing, because at times it could be a little muddy in the theater I was watching it in. But I loved the sounds and the noises for the aliens. I really, really appreciated a lot of the different silent moments, and then the noises you were hearing, the natural sound or whatever the Foley artist was creating. It really aided the viewing experience for me. Again, there's not much in this movie technically that I can say, that's a sore thumb. No, nothing stuck out that way. Instead, I really think that this movie nails it in the technical department on almost every level. So overall, you guys, I know, it sounds like I love this movie. And it's because I do, okay? I love this movie so much. This was a movie that had me on the edge of my seat, and not because somebody spilled my popcorn. Yeah, this dude just knocked my popcorn over. Why would you do that? So overall, you guys, here's where I'm landing on Disclosure Day. It is my favorite movie of the year so far. I loved this film so much. Not only was I on the edge of my seat the entire time, and not only because some dude spilled my popcorn with butter on the seat. Why would he do that? But it was my popcorn. But the thing is, the film itself is gripping. It's an incredible mystery sci-fi adventure, and it's an original story, and I'm a sucker for that, especially when it comes from the genius of Steven Spielberg and a screenwriter who's finally kind of getting back in the groove of things, it seems, with David Cope. But I really loved this film. The acting, again, is incredible. Emily Blunt gives my favorite performance of the year. So this movie has a lot of those first for me so far in 2026. It's a movie I didn't stop thinking about even when I went to bed. I woke up in the morning wanting to watch it again. So yes, Disclosure Day is a film that I absolutely love, and I know the ending might not be for everyone, and I get that sometimes you'll walk into a movie like this and want a ton of action, but sit down, take the movie for what it is, and I believe that you'll enjoy this movie just as much as me. It's a must-watch in theaters this weekend, guys, so you need to see it, and when you do, let me know in the comments below what you would rate the film, because I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 aliens. Feel bad for that half alien. All right, y'all. Well, again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Got a lot coming up this weekend. Toy Story 5, Supergirl soon, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I gotta really get started on all those things, okay? Yeah, gotta get prepped for all my coverage. Alrighty, y'all. Well, again, thanks so much for checking out my review of Disclosure Day. God bless you all, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Yeah, you know, I don't know. Nothing crazy can happen during this outro, right? Nothing. Dang it. Are they here? Yo.